Hey, this is Jay.
And this is Chelsea.
Welcome to the Shifting Perceptions podcast.
We are bringing you inspiration to live a more creative lifestyle because our favorite people are the ones that choose the path less traveled.
Hey everyone, this is Jay Alders, and I have a great conversation to share with you. I had a lot of fun talking to our next guest, artist Harry Pack. Harry is a UK-based visual artist. I first found his work on Twitter, just sort of browsing around, checking out some artists on the NFT community, and Harry's work and his name kept getting referenced, and I stumbled upon his artwork and just immediately was drawn towards it. It's really whimsical. It's very fun. Has a lot of really good energy to it. It's very colorful. It's really great composition, and it has some cartoony elements to it, but also some deeper meanings and some surreal imagery. There's a lot of different things going on in his work. Even though the subject matter shifts around, his style is very recognizable. If you've seen his work once, you'll recognize it throughout his collection. So if you are new to the NFT scene, like most people are, NFTs are non-fungible tokens. It's all the craze now on social media and the news. It's artwork that is verified and bought and sold on the blockchain. And Harry has quite a bit of success that he's amassed in the past 3 to 6 months. Currently, at the time of recording this intro, he has a volume of 156 Ethereum's worth of art sold. To put that into US dollars, for people that are not following the Ethereum USD currency valuation, that is more than $500,000 worth of artwork that Harry has sold to collectors around the world. Super impressive. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Harry, besides him being a very talented guy, I looked at his website, and as you'll hear in this conversation, there was very little about him on his site. He was sort of a mystery, and I wanted to understand who is the person behind the art, and I wasn't disappointed. We dove into topics ranging from his very open and candid discussions about his recovery. We talked about mental health. We talked about NFTs rather, in a not so nerdy sense, but a little nerdy stuff towards the end. But yeah, I think you guys are going to like this one, whether you're into crypto art or not. Even if you're just an artist or just someone that's curious about art or NFTs, I think you're going to love it. We sort of transitioned into NFTs by way of talking about Harry's journey as an artist and as a human and as a recovering human, and trying to deal with all the different struggles. So, yeah, I'm going to jump right into it. We started the conversation very casually, so there's no hard intro. We just kind of jumped into the conversation that we had. I hope you guys like it. Please check out Harry's work. You could find him on his OpenSea collection, Harry Pack Art, or you can just go on Twitter, which is a great way to interact with him. And if you look up Harry, at Harry Pack Art, the number 1, you'll find him on Twitter, and he's very active on there as well. You'll find me on all social media at Jay Alders. I'd love to hear what you think of this one. Please share, follow, subscribe, like, all that stuff helps a bunch. I'm a one-man show. Doing this by myself. All the love goes a long way. And that's it. Let's get to it. A lot of friends who live on the beach, like Cornwall area.
Yeah, Cornwall's awesome. It's very different. It's almost like a different country.
Yeah.
If people come to visit, it's probably the best place to take them, because I don't know, it just feels there's a different atmosphere there, and it's where everybody in England goes to escape England if they can't escape England. You know what I mean? Yeah. Have you been? Have you?
The only part of the UK I've been to is Ireland, and it was only a very brief stay coming back from France. So I haven't made it to England yet. My wife has been there. She studied abroad in Europe, and she spent some time there. And so we mean to get our kids over there soon, but I haven't been yet, unfortunately. I don't know if I can afford it. I heard London's like so crazy expensive.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah. I mean, I stay well away from London if I can,
Yeah.
just because it's, I don't know, it's this big concrete block and there's so much going on. And I don't know. Yeah, it is expensive. It's an expensive place to live. No one can afford a house there. But it's kind of getting like that all over the south of England. So Newbury's pretty much the same prices these days. Yeah, I've been trying to escape actually.
Yeah,
I've been trying to escape from Newbury over the years, but I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a weird atmosphere in England at the moment after Brexit and then after the COVID, and I think everybody's sort of reassessing the situation. Who knows? Yeah, house prices are ridiculously expensive.
it's the same here. I'm in New Jersey. I'm like 1 hour south of New York City and like an hour and 10 minutes northeast of Philadelphia. So I'm sort of tucked away between two metropolitans. So it's probably very similar as far as being cramped and pricing and all the crazy stuff in the world just weighing down on you. I don't. What exactly is the atmosphere over there currently? If you can shed some light on it. No, like just the atmosphere as far as like social, political life. What does life feel like right now where you are? Because I feel like when I talk to friends in different areas, it feels very, very different when I talk to my friends in one state of the United States versus another, or one town of my state to one town of the next state. So it's very strange.
Yeah, that's it. It's the same over here. So, I mean, right now I'm living in a nice little place right in the countryside. It's beautiful. It's chilled out. I've got forest over there. I spend a lot of time drawing, and I do speak to a lot of people, but I don't leave here very often. Therefore, my perception of it is it's quite chilled out at the moment. Yeah. But I know a lot of people, especially people in London, who really struggled over the last couple of years with being able to get out and about, and they'll tell me something. They'll tell you something completely different. You know, I don't get too caught up in the politics. You know, so I find it a real distraction.
Yeah.
You know, I think everything in the news is just one big distraction that stops people from being able to be creative and, you know, use their minds. And the atmosphere isn't too bad, to be fair. I don't think, you know, it's been worse. I mean, people I speak to in general seem pretty good at the moment, but I guess I speak to a sort of fairly different group of people to most. I mix my time between artists and people in recovery, and they're generally in quite a good space. So yeah, that's where most of my sort of conversation is, and it's usually around pretty positive stuff, you know, and especially with I imagine that we'll talk a bit about, you know, what's going on with the digital art world with NFTs and stuff like that. And, you know, the sort of the atmosphere in that space is just purely exciting. You know, there's a lot of really fascinating things happening, and a lot of creatives connecting with each other, which is from every corner of the earth, you know, which is something that's, I don't think has happened before, you know, in the way it's happening at the moment. So, you know, I speak to quite a broad range of people, but usually within those two categories. And I think I don't hear much complaining, you know, myself. Yeah,
well, it's interesting you're bringing these things up, because it sort of like brings us to some of the topics that I would love to chat about. So one of which, I you know, in finding your work fairly recently, I like loved your work. I find it very like whimsical and fun, and as you describe it, it's like very psychedelic and trippy, which I really love a lot. And you know, in diving into like your website, I was hoping to like find out a lot about this guy, and like you're like very elusive and like you're a mystery. And then now you're talking about how you talk to a lot of artists and people that are in recovery. And from my experience, that's there's a big overlap with those two groups, and then in trying to like, and then so I first found your work, tried to figure out a little bit about you, was looking at your work, and then previous to our conversation, I obviously wanted to do some research. Very difficult. I found in trying to find some stuff about you, I found an alien emoji, a mushroom emoji, a heart emoji, a carrot, and a sun. And so now I'm thinking maybe it's a good topic to bring up. So does this imply that you are in recovery? And can you talk about maybe talk about that and how that perhaps has influenced your work, because I would love to kind of know about Harry. I'd like to know about you and your story and share that with people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I need to. I need to do an update on my sort of internet stuff. My website is actually quite a recent thing. I spent about 5 years panicking, thinking I need to make a website. I need to get money and pay someone to do it because I don't know how to do it. And then it took me about 2 days to put it together after all of that panicking. And it's not the most professional thing. I did it because I felt like it was about time I had some sort of online portfolio that just said a few basic things, and that meant I could say, look, here's my website, go and have a look or whatever. Right. And I haven't been I've never really taken myself too seriously. And I think that's good for me, just for the way my head works. I feel, with recovery, it's essential that you have serenity. I like to keep things as simple as possible, because I've found that over time, things, like buses come along in threes, so does everything else. And I'm not, in the past, I haven't been very good at coping with lots of things happening all at the same time. They all turn into one big thing and explode. And so I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for the last, I think it's about 4.5 years, and been the best 4.5 years of my life. I take it really seriously. I know if I put it in front of everything else will flow smoothly. I spend a lot of my time talking to other people in recovery, because I get that connection, and I get that external perspective on my internal problem, which has become less and less of a problem the more I've focused on the recovery side of things rather than the problem. And I had a fairly long in and out of recovery, just over a decade of going in and out of recovery, not doing the suggested work, and it was a nightmare, and as everybody says, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I was going around in these spirals of destruction and chaos, and until I eventually lost my mind. And it was, I'd been told, it's a slow suicide. I did believe that, but I just didn't think I was quite there yet. And I didn't, I don't know, I just wasn't willing to fully accept the true nature of the illness, until it got really frightening. And I developed this psychosis in which I started seeing things that weren't actually there. And my body, my mind just crumbled all at once. And it was terrifying, and actually what happened was I was lucky enough to have been in and out of the rooms, the recovery rooms, and I'd had a few sort of, I knew a few of the things that people do to, stay well.
Right.
And I ended up getting on my knees and begging this thing that I didn't believe in at the time to, I said, I don't want anything to do with my life anymore. I give up. I don't want anything to do with Harry. I will do whatever it takes just to get my sanity back. And the moment I did that, it was I felt this sort of form of relief just cross over me, and it was like I'd finally accepted my inability to live my life like that. I'd accepted the first step of recovery, which is to accept that you're powerless and your life's unmanageable. And I went and sat on the doorstep of the place where I had my home meeting, and I didn't really know what to do. I just took my big book, which is the book that describes the solution of this stuff. And because I was hallucinating, I thought I was a boat. And as I was sitting on the doorstep, I had this book in front of me, and I realized, if I'm reading this book, I'm going upstream towards all of the good stuff, the love, the laughter, the freedom, the happiness. But as soon as I put the book down, my mind starts floating back down towards all the chaos and the destruction. And, it was a really powerful analogy. It was a real epiphany. And I just decided, right, well, I know there are certain things that people have to do each day. If I just keep doing these things, then I'll keep moving in the right direction. And, luckily enough, I met someone who I asked to help me through the process. And I just did everything he told me to do. And I've done it. I've taken it very seriously every day for the last 4.5 years and intend to, carry on. And, it's taken me from feeling like a, pretty useless guy who seemed to successfully mess up everything he put his hand to feeling like I've got a purpose, and that purpose being to make myself, find enough serenity to make myself a useful person. Because by being available for other people, I feel like I've got that purpose. And I was very fortunate enough to have, spent a lot of time and poured my soul into my art, and that became almost like an added on tool, because a lot of the imagery that I make is focused on my own sort of perception of spirituality and psychedelia, which I see as something that falls into the same category as spirituality, and luckily enough, going into this new space with all these creatives online, I've kind of I realised that I'd be a good idea to just try and apply this stuff to that as well. So I'm trying to just make myself useful to other artists because they have the same conversation that I need to be having, surrounding art. I get a lot of their ideas. I can reflect with them and just discuss, that I get that external fix from another creative that I need, as I'm sure you understand as a, fantastic artist yourself.
Thank you.
Hey.
Hearing you talk, it's, I wish I couldn't admit this, but I feel a lot of relatability to a lot of what you said. So I grew up with my mom is very bipolar and had a lot of mental breaks, and a lot of my childhood was spent with my mom in the hospital or with like over medication, attempts on her life, and then clearly being a kid that grew up in that way, it affects you. And I spent a lot of years in very, very dark lows and having similar feelings of like, without being over dramatic, like if there was a volcano next to my house, I might not be here right now. Like if I could just figure out a nice way to just vanish, I think a lot of artists especially can relate to that, because I think by our inherent nature, we look into things really deeply and we put ourselves into other situations, and we look for situations to find our identity in, and it could consume us. And I never was an addict, like in quotes, but I definitely got darn close. And I feel like if it wasn't for a couple of really scary incidents, like I had a friend of mine who had a heart attack after one of our New Year's parties by just taking way too many things all at once. And I had a couple instances that just scared me into realizing, like, this is serious. This is really serious to mess with these things. And when you were talking, I remember one in particular time I was in a super dark low. It was a very bad place. And I was sitting next to my house at the time was next to a highway, and I was in a hammock, and I was looking up at the power lines, and like just a similar kind of thing, like just talking to God or anyone that would listen, whoever, I don't know, anyone that would listen to me, please help me. And as I was doing it, I took note of like the negative space between the power lines, as artists do. You just find weird ways to see things. And then I for some reason, I just got transfixed on that. And I remembered a lesson I had in art school where, the whole thing where you draw a negative space, you're drawing a chair and you focus on the negative space. And then I realized like something in me kind of like, it didn't just change overnight, but a little tiny switch went off of like realizing how much of my life I had been spending focusing on negative space, negativity, and realizing that if I would just switch my thinking and look at the exact opposite, what was surrounding the negative space, it had a lot of good stuff going on. And similar to like you were describing, as soon as I sort of declared, I want to make a difference, I'm going to do good things with my life, I'm going to change my obsessiveness and point it towards something good, things really do shift. And it's interesting because the way you're talking, it makes so much sense, because in my limited exposure to you, I just learned of your art maybe a month or so ago, and I've been watching what you're doing online, and I think I tweeted about this also. One of the things besides your artwork, which is so impressive, is you're always promoting other artists, and I feel your genuineness as you talk, and I love that. And I hope that artists that are struggling, that are listening to you talk, can realize that art is not just about like how to come up with a scheme to sell more NFTs or more prints or get the next deal or be noticed by Jay-Z, but like art can literally lead people like you or I or others listening towards a sort of salvation, a sort of refresh spiritually. So I thank you for coming out and being so vulnerable about that, because it really does make a lot more sense, and so I guess, is there any advice for people listening that you can have? What are those first steps? Because those first steps are really hard. What would you recommend artists doing, and or people that are struggling mentally? What are some of the first steps? Because like artists are in a period of time where they're comparing themselves to you or to other artists and people that are doing so well. And I see messages from people that are just feeling like giving up on their art, giving up on their lives, giving up on so many things. How do you get power and strength?
Yeah. Well, a few things. I'd say, for me, I had a natural. I was lucky enough to be pushed from a young age to continue drawing, and it really was I did end up on a number of occasions thinking I'm useless. The only thing I've got is this, and I'd always have pens about and paint. So I originally painted, and it was a bit obsessional, and it still is at times. But there's that as a result of finding a bit more balance, I have a lot more clarity as to what I'm doing. I just go back to what you said about helping other artists. For me, it's something I found was a bit of a no-brainer, because as you probably imagine, and you probably experience yourself, sometimes it's difficult. If people find it difficult to talk about their own work, they feel self-absorbed and they don't like, and especially if someone's not used to limelight or used to speaking in front of people, or a lot of artists who haven't been successful don't actually know what their art's about. So that they've really struggled to find the words to explain it. And, that's completely normal. And if they did know straight away, hats off to them. But what I noticed is that if I'm helping other artists out and trying to promote theirs, I actually sort of feel a bit more comfortable promoting my own. And right. when it comes to promoting it, I'm talking about currently we use an app called Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, where a lot of artists jump on and they share their work and talk about their latest project. And if I feel more relaxed because I've spent a bit of time helping someone else out, I feel like I feel a deeper connection with my art, and I get to describe it a little bit better. I can only really speak for myself, but my art is. My art reflects me. It's a reflection of something I have inside. It's something that I talk about this a bit. But I saw Captain Beefheart getting interviewed once, and he just said, "I'm trying to turn myself inside out." And that's how I could really relate to that, because I just want to get the stuff that's in me out on paper. For me to see, it's something that I love doing. I love the process. I love the not knowing what's going to appear, and I find it interesting, like a puzzle or a game. It's a search for serenity in chaos. And I had a few experiences where I talk about. It sort of became apparent when you were around artists, people's creativity becomes some form of their very own form of hieroglyphic language. You have a conversation with another artist, and it's like your art is talking to their art. And that really fascinated me, and there were a few occasions where I found myself explaining my art to people. Now, I was very internal when I was younger. Before my recovery, I found it very difficult to communicate with people. I just couldn't, because of all of the rubbish that was in my head. It was a big pot of all sorts of nonsense, and I spent a long time thinking I'd been abducted by aliens, and I'd have these entities in another dimension talking to me, telling me to draw pictures. And I went off on this huge sort of I wouldn't say wild goose chase, because I still don't know what happened, but it led me down some quite sort of strange places. And I did lose touch with reality. I was full flight from reality, and I did notice on occasions I'd end up in conversation with someone about art, and it's like that conversation would just pull me out of the madness for a few moments, and I'd find myself thinking, I'm connected. This is amazing. I'm actually communicating with this human being like a normal human being, and they seem interested, and they seem like they're looking at me like I'm a normal person. And then I'd go back inside myself as the conversation ended, and I go, what was that? All I can say is that I think just constantly talking to other creatives about it, and self-exploration for me was just so vital, and I found that in recovery. I did a very deep, can't say a deep clean, but I looked really intensely into my past, worked out, all of the different character defects that I have, all of the people that have upset me over the years, all the people that I've upset. And I became a lot more self-aware of who I am as a person. And self-awareness, I think, is quite essential as an artist, depending on what your practice is. But for me, it was really vital, because a lot of, and I was talking to a friend about this recently. A lot of people create art, and it doesn't make much sense to them until later on. Yeah. What it means, And my friend is a guy called Josh Bow. He said it's called dimension suppression. So something's coming out of you from somewhere. You put it down, but you don't know it's there until you have a discussion with someone about it later on. And it's quite interesting. Because you can use art as a tool for exploration to understand who you are. It brings stuff out that you can't usually find by looking yourself. And when I found myself suddenly surrounded by lots of artists, I realized that there was a lot of conversations around creative stuff, and it was making me realize a lot of stuff about my own work. And I went back to writing about who I am, but from a creative perspective this time. And I was looking at things like, even the color of the clothes that my mum used to dress me up in when I was 4 or 5. Yeah. The first time I started copying people's signatures when I was about 6, and pretending I was them, and, stuff like that would, naturally kind of alter the, creative psyche, the sort of things like that, affect you and lead you into becoming someone that sort of thinks slightly outside of the box. And discussing these things as I discover them, with other people like now, and seeing what happens. It's I think you said earlier, when you were saying about looking through the telephone wires and you just made this decision. Yeah. I think it's that firm decision. I've questioned all my life: am I an artist, or am I just wasting my time? And I've made that decision that I am an artist. This is what I'm going to do. Fortunately, there's nothing else to pick. So I'm just heavily into it, and I'll do what I once I made that decision and I lost all of those fears that were holding me back, it's been a really beautiful experience, and exciting to be surrounded by so many sort of other creatives suddenly. And I just think, helping other artists out it's really good fun. You get to know lots of interesting people who've got similar stories to yourself, and you know how hard it is to make it as an artist, and you just wish someone would come down and give you a hand. And I've had a bit of success recently, but I do know what it's like to want someone to just say, do this or do that, and I can only pass on what I know, but I try and pass on what I know. So it's perseverance. persistence. You've got to just put everything into it, if you want to have any success, I think.
So much of what you said, I like, just kind of hit me. You had talked about sort of how your childhood experiences sort of impact the rest of your art, and I definitely see that in my own work. I'm sure every artist, sees and relates to that. I remember being a little kid. I just always sucked at everything else. People ask, like, how did you become an artist? I'm like, because I sucked at literally everything except for art. I was terrible at team sports. I was picked last for every team. I was hit in the head for every dodgeball. And I remember being like the little kid in a skateboard in the street and having these like, being alone. I was like a very socially awkward, weird, introverted kid. And I would like stare at the street and just look around my skateboard and having the sun beat behind me and staring at these weird shadows I was making. And in retrospect, I think just playing with my own shadows sort of impacted how I stretched the form. And it's like, things like you mentioned earlier, it's like a lot of times you don't realize what you're doing until after the fact. And you kind of implied, and we're dancing around the topic of your style. And before we get off the topic of where we are, I really am curious how recovering has affected your art. I know, like for me, I felt for many, many years that if I had not been smoking a lot of weed and doing other drugs, that I don't know if I would have an art career, because I might have been more logical and chosen something else. I don't know if I would have seen the stuff that I saw or experienced the things I did. It's stuff that I never would choose to do again, but there was benefit in it. And then for a very, very long time now, I've been living pretty clean, except for like a half a glass of wine here and there. But having that experience of going from one extreme to the other, it almost begs the question of like, can you still tap into that stuff, that crazy, weird, trippy stuff? Like, and I remember reading a book by Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, great book, talks about how when she gave up alcohol, she didn't know if she could write again. And I'm wondering if you could speak on that, because I feel like a lot of artists, yourself and myself included, have experienced what it's like to create on substances and then getting off of those things and still finding inspiration, and wondering if you still have that superpower. Was that a struggle for you at all?
No, it wasn't.
It was not
at all.
Good for you,
actually. And I mean, I think there's a lot of inspiration that people do get from things like psychedelics and altered states, I should say, because it's broader than just psychedelics. It's altered states, and you can get altered states from meditation and prayer and all sorts of things, and surfing, I guess. I don't surf. I'd like to learn someday, but from what my friends have said, it's like an altered state, and psychedelics were they fascinated me for a long time, and I did draw inspiration from not only psychedelics but the culture around them. There's the psychedelic culture is incredibly innovative, and it's affected the planet massively. Even in the tech world today. I didn't struggle because my art has. I was making it before I found psychedelics and altered states. It's actually when I found recovery, I found a lot more clarity in my thinking. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the work I did before was quite chaotic. And I used to have a lot of people say, you need some white space in there. You need a bit of breathing space in between all of that madness. And I was like, okay. And every now and then I would release something and it would have a bit of white space. And I would get people saying, oh, that's a lot, it's easier to look at. And I'd be like, wow, interesting, and when I got well, I had a number of people say, I've really noticed something in your work. It seems to have a lot more clarity to it, and has something happened? I'd be thinking, yeah, something has happened, and my mind went from being, I consider it was broken, I went completely round the bend, and within a short space of time, my mind started working again better than it had ever worked before, and I remember sitting on the end of my bed one day and thinking, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And then suddenly realizing I don't need to do anything. I've paid off my debt. I've made amends with everybody. I've worked my program. I've got a job. I've got a car. I've got a roof over my head. This is the first time in my life where I don't have to do anything. And I just sat there and just breathed, and it was just incredible, man. And I just found myself doing that while I was making art and I noticed that a lot of the time I'd been making art, I wasn't breathing properly. I was just sort of sitting there, just like really focused up close to the paper, and I started breathing while I was making it, and the images started breathing back at me, the stuff that I'd done in the past as well. I started to see stuff in them, like I said earlier, that I hadn't noticed before. And I really started to recognize, where my mind was at when I made that work and what it meant. And it was really like, this is the build up to the rest of your life. The moment you made that decision to just take this stuff more seriously. And I always remember reading this thing. It was an article about, I think it was Anish Kapoor, who's a hugely famous artist, and he was talking about the sublime, and how you can. It's like standing on this. You can work and work and work until you're standing on this, cliff edge almost. I think it was him anyway. It might have been someone else. And then suddenly you let go of it all and you fall into it, and it's just it's like you've just accepted everything, and everything you do is then your art. Everything that you do in your life is related to whatever it is that you're producing, and I kind of found myself just sort of going through that phase and coming out the other side and going, wow, I'm happy making whatever it is that comes to my mind. I love sharing it with people. I've got an income. This is all I'm going to be doing from now on, and it was just like, it's something it's a process I'm still going through, but it's a learning process, and the other side of it is that I've only just started meeting all of these other creatives, and I'm still adapting to that and, working out what steps next. And you have to be a little bit careful, but at the same time, I think if you're just yourself, then, it shouldn't be too difficult. I'm in a really good position now to just keep making the art I like. People seem to get a real good buzz off it. It does invoke some pretty funny conversations sometimes, I love doing it. I wake up and I just get on it straight away. And sometimes I work from 7 a.m. till 3 a.m, and which it probably isn't very healthy, but it's what I love doing. I won't be doing that forever, but I'm sort of, I feel like I'm catching up, and my mind's in a good place. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think your work does indeed breathe back at you. I mean, the colors and everything. I would like to talk about dive into your style a little bit, and perhaps technique. Like, I was looking a little bit at your website, Harry, and I looked. Obviously, I've been following you on Instagram and Twitter and all that. So I see where you are now, and I'm curious, how you have come to land where you are. Like, was there a certain drawing or a certain moment or a certain experience where I see, like, some of your earlier drawings, you could see your style in it, but it's not quite fully where it is now. And I'm sure where it is next year will be different than now. But you're talking on your current style, in air quotes here. Where do you see that first solidified, and where do you see it? Where do you see it going next, if at all? If you see it, or if you even consciously think about where it's going next. Do you see it going somewhere? Do you see where it came from? Like, talk to me about that. So the current style is I've got a few projects I'm working on at the moment. I had a real life-changing experience a 2.5 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago exactly today, and I got featured as the main artist on the OpenSea website, which is the biggest NFT. Yeah, it's nuts. Congrats, dude.
I'm still sort of adapting to that, because that's definitely the biggest thing that's ever happened for me. And it happened as a result of two pieces that I put up, and I did a drop party with a friend of mine, and these two pieces were the start of a new series. Okay. And when that happens, you suddenly get a lot of attraction from everywhere of people looking at your work, and you have to keep producing stuff at quite a rapid pace. And it involved me having to redraw digitally a lot of the work that I'd already done, as well as produce new stuff. So I had to kind of put a break on that project that I was starting off, and start because that takes time to think about that stuff, the new stuff, because it's new. But what I was looking at with that, and that is the most. That's like, so that's the stuff that I want to be doing now, and I am doing right now. And what it is it's an attempt at looking at my sort of certain memories of my childhood, and trying to look through the eyes of my younger self with my consciousness now as an adult, and just really trying to sort of perceive all of the different concepts and things that you don't understand back then in a new light, but using the process of recreating these images as another way of extracting data from my memory. And I try and apply like a combination of the aesthetic of my childhood to the aesthetic of the artwork that I'm producing now. So one of the pieces is called "The Apple Fell Out of the Tree," and it was one of my earliest memories of being. I was reading this kids' book, looking out the window, and I couldn't work out how the word "the" meant, and so it's called "Apple Fell Out of Tree" because I kept saying "tuh" every time it came to the word, and I remember looking out the window while I was thinking about it, and it's just a memory I had, but it was a really beautiful memory. It was the aesthetic of, I guess it was the 80s. It was the house we were in. There was a garden there, and I just remember this feeling of warmth, and I think I'm fond of those memories because it was before the stuff that happened that led me into becoming an addict, alcoholic, so I'm very fond of those memories. And basically, I tried to sort of apply this aesthetic of Lego in his hair, and then there are these. He's looking out into this garden of sort of abstract sculptures, which kind of represent the strange concepts that adults tell you when you're younger that you just don't understand because you're new to this world, and. It's really it's fun, and it's an exploration for me, to create these memories and just try and look into them, because it's so essential for me to know who I am and as an artist, because that's what I need to be putting onto the paper, and I can tell if it's not me. Sometimes stuff comes out and you're like, well, I don't know where that came from, but there's always some way of picking it apart. But it's highly. I was initially interested in surreal art, and then abstract art, and those I still am. I see the combinations as something really fascinating. Abstract surrealism. It's something that just sounds really cool and fascinating. And I like to sort of think of the work that I'm making as sort of almost like psychedelic abstract surrealism, and it's like, I did a female version of that image of this girl looking out the window, and the picture's called why is it all so abstract? And I tried to sort of do the same thing with the aesthetic. I tried to make it kind of look like everything is made of Play-Doh, another toy that we used, but using kind of like the sort of colors that I remember girls liking when I was younger and stuff like that. And it's just also a play on, the child's perception of boy and girl when you're younger as well. And it's playful, and the idea is that I'll keep making images of these memories, and just see what comes out of them. And maybe I'll eventually get to my current self, and might implode or something, I don't know. But, so that's kind of like a new, it was a sort of turning point for me. And I thought, and I'm really excited about what I'm going to discover doing it. But it's a conglomerate of all of the other work that I've done in the past. It's like, I should understand. You kind of use all of the information from the work you've done prior, sort of get going on the next stuff, whether you want to or not. It's always going to be there. Some of it's very much improvised. You make it and then see what pops up, and then you can take that from there and put it over there and mix it with some of that, like a cooking recipe almost.
Just a quick break. I'll get back to the conversation in a second. No fancy sponsors to bombard you with of any sort. Just a quick reminder that both Harry and myself are working artists. We make our living from good people like you who choose to support us, whether that means making a purchase or collecting one of our pieces, or even just giving us a shout out online to let your friends and family know about our work. Stuff like that goes a long way. We appreciate it so much. I can be found on jalders.com, and all the links to all my prints and my NFT collections and my merch, all that good stuff can be found on there. I'm also on social media at jalders, and as noted, Harry is really active on Twitter, and his OpenSea account is a great way to collect his work. But one quick note before we get back, most importantly, I wanted to wish my beautiful, smart, funny, amazing daughter, Summer Emerson, a happy 8th birthday. We celebrated her birthday yesterday. It was actually over the whole weekend, really. It was a great weekend. She had a lot of fun. One of the many things that she was given as a gift was an Apple Pencil for her iPad, which she is totally thrilled about. I've been teaching her and my boys a little bit about the basics of investing and trying to teach them the concepts of crypto and NFTs, and we're really excited to be able to share their work and learn about how to make money on their own. And it's really great as a parent to instill those lessons of being able to share your work and be self-reliant. It's pretty amazing. My daughter and my boys, my twin boys, already are displaying entrepreneurship tendencies. They have been selling bracelets, and my daughter was selling knitted hats last year, and she actually bought her own iPad, which I'm super proud of her about. But yeah, happy birthday, Summer. I love you. Let's get back to the conversation with Harry. Before I'm going to get into NFTs next, more specifically, but before we do, I'm super curious, about some stuff you mentioned. You were talking about how you sort of just draw what comes from you, right? And I know for me, something I don't want to use the word struggle because it sounds really over dramatic, but I find that I have multiple, as we all do, we have multiple artists living inside of our brain or inside of us, and one part of me just loves tripping out on oil paint details and getting super crazy rendered, and then another side of me loves just taking an ink pen and doing super simple, almost cartoony stuff, and I like doing all these different things, which is great cathartically and it's great for therapy, but it's not necessarily the greatest thing when it comes to marketing and selling your work. So I was wondering if number one, you could touch upon that topic about sort of whether or not you believe there's an importance to sticking within a certain genre or a certain style or a certain subject matter, and does it feel almost like you're restraining other sides of you. And then sort of related question I'd love for you to kind of touch upon in any order that you want, is do you ever feel, or are you starting to feel any sort of almost, this is going to sound very overdramatic, but almost like an imprisonment by your current style. But when you look at your OpenSeas, first of all, kudos, dude, because it says 155 Ethereum volume traded. I just want to cheer you on. I'm so stoked. And but then on the other side of it, right? This is in the classification as a really effing good problem. But it's then people expect Harry's next piece to look like Harry's previous 10 pieces. And then it's do you feel the pressure or the sort of restriction of well, I better stick to what works because I'm freaking killing it right now, and people expect me to sort of be Harry as they know Harry for the next 10 years. Can you talk about some of those topics and whatever I said that struck you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel any pressure at all, and I mean, when this OpenSea thing happened, I finished this drop party that we did, and I sold 3 of the 10 pieces in the party, and I was happy, I was like, brilliant, this is fantastic, and then I was trying to get to sleep after we were talking for 7 hours, and I was like, oh great, I get to sleep now, and then my phone went ding, and and I was like, no way, I sold a 4th, and then I went to see who had bought it, and it went ding again, and I thought, what? They must have sent the email twice by accident. And then it just goes bing, 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 and like all the other 5 sold, and I was like, "This is crazy," And I looked, and I was just like, I was in disbelief, and then I was trying to get to sleep again, and my brain was going, "You just made loads of money," And then my phone goes light again, and I looked, and it says OpenSea's just featured you as their featured artist, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice." And I just put the phone down. I woke up the next day, and my friend Alice messaged me and said, "Harry, you're on the front page." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. It's cool, isn't it?" And it just hadn't clicked. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, and it still hasn't really. Like, I was like, okay, this is where you're meant to sort of show some form of emotion, And I was just like, this is cool, great. This is better than what I wanted. So yeah, wicked. And then someone else called me up. My mate Savis called me up. He's like, "You're on the front page." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, man. I know." Right? And he's like, "This is huge." And I was like, it's like, I thought he was trying to sort of stoke some emotion in me. I was like, wow. And then it dawned on me that this is a big deal. And it's what most people want. Someone said to me the other day, it's the silver bullet. And I did initially feel a lot of pressure because I had to churn out a lot of work and make the most. And I realized this is, if there's ever an opportunity to do well with your art, this is going to be it, and not going to get any bigger than this. And that made me think, wow, I got to get this done. I got to put everything into this. And there's a number of things that were happening at the same time in real life. And I just had to switch off, completely, and just focus on this and just watch where my head was at, and I had to just remind myself I was still going to my meetings, still speaking to my people and friends in recovery, and just keeping my head balanced. And I thought a bit about, I've someone's been guiding me who's been in the NFT space for 6 months, and he's been a huge help. And he was, kind of just doing like quality checks and giving me advice on what to drop, how much to drop it for, how many to drop, how many editions, all this sort of stuff, and now I feel like I've come out the other side, and it's been cool. It's been a really enjoyable experience, and I learned more in the last 3 weeks than most of my life as an artist. Because I already had to put my foot down and learn a lot more about how you're meant to sort of sell stuff, how you speak to people, how how important the community is around you. You need to have your group of artists, friends that you can communicate with. And it's the people that have been helping me. I've only known them for 3 months, and they feel like some of the best friends I've ever had. It's been really, really beautiful experience. And with regards to the style thing, I personally, I'm not too affected by what, whether it's got nothing to do with anybody else, what I make. Mm-hmm. I make what I want to see. I always have. And I always wanted to make it better so that I can enjoy it more. And I do struggle sometimes with commissions, and when someone asks me to do something, it involves somebody else, and it becomes I don't know. I don't mind doing collaborations. I quite enjoy collaborations, but commissions are a bit. I'll still do them, but I just that's for the same reason that I don't feel pressure to do anybody else's, to change my style to suit other people, because I believe that I think I've had success because I've been quite good at expressing what's in me, and that's kind of a lucky thing, I guess, because I live and breathe what I'm doing with my art. I'm sort of getting regular comments about how I'm a bit abnormal, a bit of a weirdo, which I'm happy about. It's like, I don't fit in like normal people. I never have. I'm accepted now, but that's great. I don't really care. I'm happy with who I am. I'm making art that is, it's my perspective on whatever's interesting me at the moment. And there's a lot of positive stuff. I put a lot of positive stuff in there, which I think makes other people think. I try and put something behind each image that will make someone think outside of the box, or about, it's okay to be different. And I think it's something that I feel really is one of the main underlying features of what I'm making, is because it I just think, I really do believe you get what you give and you keep it by giving it away. And it took me a long time to feel accepted. And, when I realized it doesn't actually matter what people think of me, it's got nothing to do with me, what people think of me. I just sort of, realized it's something, I think I enjoy putting it into my work,
Man, there's like a lot to unpack there. Oh man. I guess one of the things I wanted to know from you is so I have been a professional artist my whole life, and it's all I know. And this NFT thing is super exciting, and it's super different, and a lot of people don't understand it. Maybe people listening have no idea what we're talking about. They should definitely, jump into some YouTubes and figure it out. But as far as the basics go. But one of the things that was more interesting as far as a paradigm shift for me is I spent my entire career, like sort of as most artists, previous NFTs, like you hoard your high-res files, you make sure you put, your copyright and your watermark on it. You don't want people to steal your stuff off the web. That's like the previous paradigm. And, I've made my whole living based on selling originals and selling prints of my work. And the idea of putting out like an unwatermarked, uncopyrighted image, just put them all out there. Previous to this was like, why would you do that? Everyone could just print your work, and you can't sell prints, and you can't make a living. And it's been such a strange paradigm shift to reprogram my brain in that way. I would imagine you, being still relatively new to this space as well, and having done what looks like, ink and watercolor pieces before this, or markers or something of that sort. Was that sort of a paradigm shift for you as well? Or, where were you with all that?
Not really, no, because I didn't have a massive following, to be honest. I've got something. I'm on 13,000 followers on Instagram, but that's recent. Before that, I don't think anyone had heard of me. Okay, I'm not a well-known artist. I've got a few friends who've spoken about it, and I think the first platform I used was DeviantArt.
Yeah, I remember that one. Is that still around? It's still up.
Still thing, yeah. I looked at it the other day for some reason. I think I Googled my name. Yeah. And it was one of the first pictures that came up, and I clicked on it. I thought, wow, that was a long time ago. Right. What happened? You could like watermark your images on there, I think. Yeah. But I just thought to myself, someone's going to copy my stuff. It's not going to take much work to copy it anyway. Right. I can't catch these people, so I just thought I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And actually, one of the things that was frustrating in the last 3 weeks, I didn't let it bug me much, but it bugged other people more than me. There was someone on another Cardano platform, blockchain, who just taken my work and was selling it on there to people, and they call themselves Surreal Me. And I actually, I thought I'd heard of someone else copying someone's work recently, and I thought, I just felt sorry for the person they'd stolen it off, because that's their life's work. And I felt more sorry for them than I did for myself, because the only problem was that you're trying to, I'm a bit of a people pleaser at times. So I it's one of the things I need to still let go of is, when selling stuff, I'm always just like, I want to give people the best deal and give them the support that anyone would want to give to their customers. Do you know what I mean? Or anybody that takes any interest in them whatsoever. I feel like I owe it to them, and I also want to make that connection and have a deeper conversation with someone who's liked my work than just, here you go, thanks, see ya. And I had a few people contact me and say, Harry, this guy's selling your stuff. You need to stop him. And I'd be like, I'm just trying to make more work because I'm on the front page of this platform at the moment.
Yeah.
I've been trying to cancel the other fake platforms on OpenSea. And now, if I do all this stuff, I'll never create anything. And it's I just let it go, man. Whoever it is that's doing it, they've obviously got some issues. They're going to get away with it. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If they get caught, then I guess, bad luck. What else can you do about it? I do think it's, if they understood what they were doing, then maybe they wouldn't do it. But they clearly don't understand what they're doing and how much it means to someone to, how much it hurts to see your work being nicked. And luckily I don't take it too personally, but I'd rather they didn't, obviously.
Right.
It's gonna happen in the digital world, especially, I think. I don't know, man. I mean, I went through. I go back to the aliens. I went into rehab when I woke up in rehab on my 23rd birthday, and I had to tell my life story to a bunch of people I didn't know. And part of that involved me believing I'd been abducted by aliens. And this guy came up to me afterwards and was like, H, he was called H as well. He goes, H, I've got to tell you something. When we lived in Africa, me and my wife saw this thing fly over our heads, and there's no way it was a man-made object. And I was like, wow, I believe it. I believe it. And he said he'd moved back to Ireland and started a B&B, and two couples had come to stay with them. And one of the couples had seen this thing fly over their heads in Africa on the same evening. And I'd had all of these crazy experiences of whenever I was talking to people about this stuff, all of the mad synchronicities would come in, and when I opened my mind up to the possibility that maybe these entities are real, then I noticed lots of good stuff just falling into place. And I believed that these entities were pushing reality in different directions to guide me in the direction that I needed to go in, and I just a few months ago, I did a course. It was a mental health first aid course. And one of the things we looked at was psychosis. And there was a girl on the course who said, my boyfriend thought aliens were real. He had psychosis. And I said to myself, they are real. And I thought to myself, wait a sec, have I had psychosis all my life? And basically I've done a series of creatures. They've got, one of them is called, they're like a series called the Prism Elves. And the idea is that these things enter our dimension through prisms of light. And there are these other sort of smiley entities. There's a smiley ogre and a smiley goblin and a smiley bunny rabbit. And the face is always the same. The face is basically it's years of I've tried to assemble this face over a long period of time, till one day I created, it's actually right here, this picture. And I drew it and I was like, wow, that is the face, and it's a big smiley face. And there was something about the geometry in it that I felt like that was the entities. They climbed into this reality through some portal in my mind. And now they're here to manifest in our reality. And we had this book in the loo when I was younger, and it was Unexplained Mysteries, and it was there was one talking about the Dogon tribe in Africa who explained this thing came out of the sky and shared information about, the Sirius B, the star that was naked to the human eye at the time, and all of this information about it and the distances between the planets. And when we had, the ability to see that far out with telescopes, we found out that all of this information was real. And these entities that came out of this shit were very similar to the entities that Tiki in New Zealand, this other water-dwelling entity, and then you've got I think they're called the Helden folk that are in Greenland. These entities are all over the place, and because I've been quite interested in ancient cultures like the Aztecs and the Mayans, and Egypt and everywhere, and the word Maya meaning the great illusion. There was a huge amount of stuff that kind of all clicked into place. And I kind of felt like these entities that I put in my art they're real to me. They've come here, and I believe they're very positive. They don't mean any harm. They come here to spread a message. And my job is to create and portray that message in positive healing energy style words, which kind of intertwine with the geometry and imagery in the pictures. And I've got a number of different ideas that I'm working on to expand this and try and get it out there. But it's all meant to be very positive, but they're somewhere in between hypnotic and happy. You kind of look at the faces, and I've had a few people say they're a little bit creepy, but they're not quite creepy enough to scare you, because they kind of look cheeky as well. So I might create a new word like treaky or something like that. But it's interesting because when your brain goes off on one, your brain goes off on one. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to get it back, and I luckily got mine back, and it's collected a lot of crazy stuff, but nothing that's too hard to comprehend or deal with. And I manage it by making art, and working my program and keeping my head in a calm place. And I'm like, you can sort of recognize problems before they happen, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's all sorts of stuff, man. Had some really, really far out experiences, and I feel quite lucky to have had them. And, you know what it's like. You come back and you meet other people that have had them too. And, I heard some people say before, the artist is important because the artist can portray that place that you think you were at, and other people can recognize it. And I get a lot of people saying, I know that place, I've been there and stuff like that. And, it's nice for me as well, because I go, okay, well, that means I'm not insane, There's a lot of work that's been done on this, with psychiatry as well. There's people using psychedelics and to do research in the psychiatric world, and there's a lot to do with. I think it's the Jungian science behind it. Looking at the character. What's the word? The different types of character, like the Joker and all that sort of stuff. It fascinates me. Some of the conversations, because all of these worlds collide at some point,
I can't help but think as you're talking that I wish I was born at a different time, because I feel like with social media and the internet and all these things, we have this opportunity to connect with other creative people like yourself, and we're fucking thousands of miles away, and we're sitting here having this conversation. And I remember being a kid experiencing similar things. I remember lying in bed and I don't know if it was just watching too many weird movies, or maybe I was just a weird kid, whatever, but I remember thinking about aliens and thinking maybe I was abducted, and those types of things go through your head. And I was also born in a time where a nuclear war with Russia was always imminent, and it was all these crazy big world things going on, and recoiling into my own mind. And it's nice to have this opportunity to talk to other people oh, you felt that crazy shit too. And, it's, I as a child, and throughout a lot of my childhood, I developed OCD, kind of obsessive, weird tics and weird things that I kind of hid from everyone, but in my own head was very chaotic. And I think a lot of it was just trying to decipher, the inspirational voices and those perhaps entities that are kind of guiding you towards good. And then it's like there's also on a very similar like walkie-talkie type frequency are like the darker voices. And I think when those frequencies get meshed up, because they kind of run in the same frequencies, or at least it seems so, and it's kind of hard to decipher, is this like an entity or a voice or an energy that's trying to drive me towards good, and I should give this voice or this energy control of my hand as I'm holding the paintbrush? Or perhaps this is not a good energy that I'm now allowing myself to be vulnerable to. And as a child, that was very hard. And even as an adult, who am I fooling? It's very hard to kind of navigate the deciphering the differences between those energies. And as you're talking, that's sort of what I'm interpreting and hearing and feeling.
Yeah, I totally relate to that as well. And I mean, this is my understanding, my own personal understanding of what I call God is love. If I'm acting out of love towards other people and just in general, I feel safe. It's like karma, and if I'm focusing my energy on other people, I don't have these negative energies in my life. Things happen, but I still feel safe, and that's my take on it. And I guess that, not everybody has that, but those energies are difficult to separate, what happened? I remember, I had one experience where a lot of people report they call it nightmare, mare meaning demon, and it's this thing that comes and sits on your chest at night. And it's fear in general, it can come in and it can cause people to think the most obscene things, and someone said to me, 50% of my head tells me lies and the other 50% believes them. And when your head's like in between two worlds, you got to be careful, working out what's real and what's not. You have to just stick to the facts. And, this is why it's good to converse with other people, because if you spend too much time in your head alone, you can come up with some stuff that's not real. I believe people can get, wired badly, or they can lose that balance throughout life and throughout, traumatic events and things like that. But I do believe that it can always be repaired. It's a very much an individual journey, isn't it? And, I know that I've had my really negative experiences where I've had, I believe I've had demons latched onto me. And it's felt as if they are feeding on my soul. I actually did write all of this stuff out in detail because they were following me around in my subconscious. I was there and I was constantly in fear that they were there, and I've released them now. They've gone, and I'm now use my energy focusing on other people, and by doing that I'm not thinking about that stuff anymore because I haven't got time to. It goes back into the whole what I was saying earlier about helping other artists in order to get that deeper connection with your own art. You feel more comfortable in connected to it once you've sort of spent a bit of time each day just doing the odd nice thing for someone else. It's something that you can, this has been discussed probably thousands of times, over the years, and hundreds of thousands of times. But it's something that needs to constantly be discussed by different people in order to keep it real and keep people, keep it activated in people's minds. I do it on a daily basis.
It's important. It's very important. It's probably one of the most important things an artist can do is contribute in whatever way, not just visually or musically. When I was a little kid, I did one of those reports that everyone does in like second grade. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I found it maybe 10 years ago, and I read it. And I'm like, holy shit! I'm pretty much doing that. It was talking about like I want to inspire people, I want to help others with my art, and was written by I was probably a second grader, and so I feel like holding on to that idealism and that beauty and love in the world can really carry us through to adulthood as long as you hold on to it. On the topic of like helping other artists, and you mentioned Prism Elves, like this kind of leads us into probably the last major topic that I would love to dive in. If you're okay with time, I have a few questions I would love to talk to you about for the NFT people, artists, collectors listening. I would love to both help and learn. Selfishly, I'd love to learn from you. Although I've been selling originals and prints of my art and done, thankfully, quite well with that section of my art. The NFT thing is relatively new to me. I've only really been trying it, or jumping into it, I should say, for the past couple months. And so I'd love to talk to you. I know you have a collection, a Prism Elves, which is separate from your other main collection. Could you share some of that advice that you got from your mentor as far as what is your thoughts on having like multiple collections versus just having everything under one collection? Is it based on a style? Is there a marketing or business side of it that you consider as well? Like, because that's something I'm considering now, because I have a lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of different styles that feel very genuine to me, and they don't all necessarily aesthetically look like they fit together, even though in my head they make sense somehow. And I'm debating on breaking them into collections. I would love your advice or opinions.
Yeah. So I would. I mean, I've seen your work, man, and I mean, first of all, it's phenomenal, and I've actually I've seen it before you contacted me.
Thank you.
I'd say. I mean, he didn't actually advise me on the collections side of things, but I can my experience is that if you've got different series, keep them in separate collections, but also you have a variety of different platforms that you have to pick from first. Mm-hmm. So I originally didn't intend to use OpenSea because I came on and I thought this is you do get there's things like known origin or foundation.
Right.
If you're new to the space, you need to be accepted or invited onto one of those platforms, and then there's there's a lot of big artists using them, and you sort of you come to the conclusion that that's the place to be, one of these more swanky looking platforms. But actually, I personally prefer OpenSea. Mm-hmm. myself, because there are more. I think there are more things you can do with OpenSea. There are more people on there, but you can look at all of the volume trade and all of the statistics you get. It's perfect. It's got everything you need, and you don't get charged 15% commission fee every time you sell something. I'm not bad mouthing the other platforms because
Sure.
They're fantastic as well. It just, the OpenSea worked for me perfectly for where I was at, and I was obviously very fortunate with it. But I'd say breaking up your work into different collections on OpenSea is definitely a really good idea. Because you can,
yeah,
and it separates, the different aesthetics or the different topics that you have in your work. It allows people to go, people can go and look at your different collections and go, well, why don't we check out this stuff? And then maybe we can buy one of each of those. And then, we'll go to that collection, get one of those or one from each collection. And then you can see the volume traded of each collection. You can keep track of stuff. And it's all very experimental because NFTs are recent, everything's new. There are new platforms coming out every week. A lot of innovative people are coming up with new concepts. Myself and a few artists who I've got to know in the last 3 months, some of them in the last couple of weeks, we've put together a clubhouse room called the Fish Tank.
Okay.
Where we're going to be just sort of every Thursday morning UK time. We'll get together, open the room up. Anyone wants to come along, we can just try and be as helpful as possible to anyone who turns up and just discuss whatever needs to be discussed. There are rooms for everything in the clubhouse, but it's, this is exactly the sort of thing that we'd discuss. How important is it to have a collection? And I'd recommend coming along, man. It's tomorrow morning, UK time. So
that's like the middle of the night for me, probably.
Yeah. It's because we started it up with a girl in Australia called Jasmine.
Okay.
It was actually her idea to start it. So we were like, well, it's going to have to be a time when Australians are awake and English people are awake as well.
Right.
And that's just, it made sense to them. But maybe we can
do it in America. Maybe we can do like an American/UK time zone that overlaps.
Yeah. Well, we've got next. When is it? It's next Thursday, and tomorrow. Actually, Jasmine is doing a drop party tomorrow at I think it's tomorrow evening UK time.
Okay.
So you could come along to that one, and then the following Thursday as well, we've got another drop party for my mate Josh and my mate Leo. Okay. So just come along, check it out, and just get to know a few people, man, because there's a really, really nice sound bunch of people in that group, and they'll really help. You'll get a mixed perspective. And I mean, what I'd say to anyone joining the NFT community is just join Clubhouse, look for NFT rooms, join Twitter Spaces, look for NFT rooms, and just listen, because I'm the least techie person on the planet, and when I came in, it was like another language altogether, and my head was going, "Give up! This is too much," And people talking about smart contracts, different platforms, all sorts of stuff, different crypto stuff, and I understand the vast majority of it now. Quite a high level. Okay. You'll get to know people quickly as well. And all you have to do is ask them questions. Right. It's very easy these days to look for people you feel safe with, to drop them a message, ask them for a few minutes of their time, ask them any questions you got. And it all starts to make sense. I that's all I've done, and it's each to their own, with the collectible stuff and the collections is, I'd recommend it if you can to separate your work into different, series and stuff like that.
You had mentioned that your friend that was sort of mentoring you talked about things such as like editions and how many to drop and when and how and blah 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 and all that stuff. Like that's something I've also been I would love your opinion and advice on. I know for me, like I've only been in it a short time, and for me, I have like a little over 6 Ethereum thus far, which I'm excited about. It's a new thing. It's a new branch for me. I'm really excited about the space. I've loved the people and the connections I've made so far. And from my very limited volume so far, I personally have done so far really much better at one-on-ones, but I see the value in doing editions because then each edition is a little more affordable for people. Could you talk about perhaps some of the either experiences and or advice that your friend that was mentoring you sort of gave you on that topic?
Yeah, well, I mean, he what he guided me on was he would say, do this many editions, not that many. Because when I first found out about editions, I started with the Prism Elves, and I heard people talking a lot about collectibles at the time, where people will do like 10,000 collectibles,
right?
And I was like, what are these things? It was one of the first things I sort of heard people talking about. And I thought, I could do my own collectibles. I'll just draw these, put these Prism Elves out and I'll just keep making them. And so I didn't know what I was doing. And I went into a room and asked, and someone said, just chuck them up there, see what happens, because it's too confusing. So I did, and I put 50 of each up, which is too many, basically. And a lot of people said, too many, Harry, what are you doing? And I thought, well, I'm just being stupid, aren't I? And then over time, they've actually started to sell, and it's been quite cool to see that happen.
Now it's probably great now.
Yeah. And I'm glad I did it now, because a few people have collected the entire series, and I like to think that they're slightly more fine art than a lot of the collectible series, which are sort of auto-generated by computers. And I think that's what I think anyway. But with regards to the editions, that was in your question, he did advise me that less is better. Collectors prefer when there are less editions. So other than the drop I did on 2 nights ago, which was 33 editions.
Mm-hmm.
I did that because a lot of people had sort of been saying, when are you going to do your next drop? And I couldn't keep up with everybody. And I just thought, I'm going to do it. It was one of my favorite pieces, and I wanted more people to have an opportunity to have it. So I did 33 editions, and I asked people who were interested in reserving a piece to send me a message.
Right.
And there were like 20 people, and I thought, okay, 20 people have reserved. I'll do another 13. Okay. And I like the number 33. So I just did. Other than that, I've been doing either 5 or 3 or 1 of 1. And that's because you don't want to look like you're mass producing stuff. It does take away some value if there are lots of editions. And it makes the artwork a bit more special. So I say you're best off keeping it low, but there is also an element of who you are. If you're a big artist, then it's it's a bit different. Do you know what I mean? If you've made it already and you're successful, and you just take these things into perspective. But the other side of it is that NFTs are new. This is a new market. There's a lot of people who have just started making art so they can make NFTs. Right. Which is great, which is fantastic. And there's a lot of people who are living in places where they don't have the same facilities, to survive as an artist, who can now make a living. People in really sort of poverty-stricken countries, people in villages in the middle of nowhere now have access to the art market without having to go through a gallery and all of the other stuff. And it's really sort of opened the game up and given a lot of people opportunities where they didn't have them before. Mm-hmm. So it's changing. And then you do have the technology aspect with, people using computers to make different forms of art, and then the metaverse, which, one of the things that really hit me was, I stayed because a few of my friends that who've been pretty successful had come in to make NFTs, sold a few, and then I came in, and I didn't do as well as they did, but they went back out and they left it, and I was thinking, okay, they've got bored, and they probably realised it's important to carry on with what they were doing, and I stayed long enough. And I went into this one room, and I heard people talking about the metaverse, and it just dawned on me what is happening. This is one of the biggest things that has ever happened on this planet. Yeah. This NFT stuff, it's going to change the world. It's going to create opportunities. There's no understanding, I don't think, of what could potentially happen, but it's massive. It's bigger than the internet. It's extremely exciting, and currently it's being run by creatives, and which is great. I think, it's exciting because creatives do think differently, and, really mixed bunch of people from everywhere have come together and are mixing ideas, and it's like a big monster that's out of control, but it is in control. Mm-hmm. I'm glad I'm involved in this stuff now, and I'd recommend anybody else who hasn't got involved, just get involved now, because it's not going away. It's only going to get bigger, and it's just inevitable that some really cool stuff's going to come out of it, and you're going to look back and go, oh my god, do you remember those days when the NFTs started? Wow, this is it. Yeah.
Yeah, big time. It's shifting so many industries, and just the way technology and hardware is keeping up with it now. Like I've been doing digital art in some form of another since the 90s, which is dating myself, but considering where it was then to where it is now, it's so much more intuitive and natural feeling now. And if hardware had not kept up in that way, obviously it would be a different scene, a different environment, a different feel. But it is super cool, and it's super amazing. And that nerdy side of me loves seeing how the iPad and Procreate and the pencil and all these cool things have now provided this opportunity where you can literally create without feeling like you're cheating, without feeling like you're skimping on your work. it's providing you so many great tools. And I think for me personally, like paint or tangible art will always win for me. Like I'll always, when I have the opportunity to go to a museum and like stare at paint strokes from 500 years ago, that to me always has a place in my heart. But it's just such a different and cool experience to have this digital medium now to sort of experiment and share and see where it goes. And it enables you to do things you can't do with paint. So I love it. I love looking at it as just a different tool in my tool belt. And so, I thank you for sharing all of your story and for kind of diving into your process. And is there anything else that we have not touched upon that you would either like to touch upon or promote or discuss before we wrap things up, Harry?
Just what you just said actually is, because I was the same, man. I've been drawing with pens. I've been a painter, and I'm now drawing on the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember how long ago. It was recent. I got commissioned to do a piece, and it paid. It was the exact price of an iPad I got paid. And I'd spoken to a friend who was doing some cool stuff, and I said, "How'd you do that?" And he goes, "iPad, Procreate." And then he said, "Your stuff would translate quite nicely." And I thought, okay, well, let's give it a go. And I bought it, and I thought, I had a go, and I was like, no, rubbish, And I thought long and hard, how am I meant to do this? Because I lose that contact with the paper, and I spend hours watching the ink, ingrain into the paper and the connection you have with the pen nibs. And
mm-hmm.
It's a spiritual experience. It's something that is, it's that energy that you've been putting into it. And I was thinking, I just can't do that. That's crazy. And then I got going on it, and I just became a bit more open-minded to it, and I picked it up again after a couple of months, and I just went for it. And I mean, there are lots of benefits to it as well. I can always go back to drawing, but with the iPad now, what I can do is a lot of the work I do means thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead to get the geometry right or the dimension right, the color formations. I don't have to worry about thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead so much. If I make a mistake, I can go back and correct it. I can test out different color formations,
mm-hmm.
and that allows me to speed up my process. So I'm making work a lot faster now, and it's enhanced the conversation in my head, and there are benefits to it, and it's now opened up the realization that I can actually delve into 3-dimensional stuff too, and actually share that conversation with other artists who are using 3D as well. And everyone's got their own journey. I initially want to go back to painting. Essentially, that's my dream. I'd love to build a studio somewhere in the countryside where I can just put 10 canvases up,
mm-hmm.
put on some loud music, and just go mental, and express myself. So yeah, you just got to experiment, haven't you? Everything's an experiment. And yeah, it's just, I'm excited to be in this space at the moment with so many, different creatives, some of them new, some of them been doing it for decades, all their life. There are people who you'll recognize who've been famous, distinguished artists for a long time, coming into the space and sharing their advice, and and you get to know them like they're your friends. It's fantastic. It's so positive, man. It's so cool.
It is an amazing tool. I was meeting with a friend of mine yesterday who's like really super into the space, and we were talking about it, and he was like asking me some questions, and like I've kind of, it sort of like feels like really natural for me. Like when I was like in 4th grade, I learned how to like program BASIC, and I was always like a kind of a computer techie nerd, and I used to make art on my computer with just a mouse, just clicking the mouse around and things like that, and it sort of just evolved into where it is now. So it feels very cool to have the tools to do the things I always wished I could have done decades ago with the computer, because it made sense to me for all the reasons you're describing. And like I was sort of dragging my feet on getting the iPad. I have 3 kids. They're all really young. Having kids is very expensive, and I was like, can I really justify like dropping like $1,200 on an iPad and getting a pencil and blah blah blah? And I finally was like, fuck it, I'll just do it. And then within like 2 weeks, I had already been in the NFT space, briefly with my other digital art. And then within like 2 weeks of getting the iPad, I was so productive and had made all the money back on the iPad costs just from new NFT sales. And I find that for me, for my lifestyle, with having young kids and a busy, weird, daily lifestyle, it's been great for like fitting in creativity where I couldn't before. Like if I was in bed and I had 15 minutes, I'm not going to set up my easel behind me and start painting, but I could pull out my iPad and like I put my kids to bed and I have some 15, 20 minutes before I pass out. And like there's a lot of like in between time that I never would have thought about busting out my art supplies, but now I feel like my creativity has exploded because it's filling in all the gaps of the day or my schedule with opportunity to create where I couldn't before. And that's been one of the really huge benefits for using the iPad as a drawing tool. It's been so cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's it. You can take it anywhere you want. Yeah, no, and yeah, you don't have to set up and get paint everywhere and think about what you're doing. I don't know if you're the same, but I used to sort of try and set up a painting and I'd sort of walk backwards and I'd knock the pot of paint over and then stand in it and then sort of slip up and land on my elbow in it and then rub it against the wall and all that sort of stuff. So there's none of that. You just literally pick it up, turn it on.
Yeah, man.
Do all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's cool.
Dude, Harry, this has been freaking awesome. I'm so stoked we finally, we got to connect and you were so eager and willing to jump on with such short notice. Everyone listening, you should check out Harry Pack on Instagram. It's Harry Pack Art. Obviously, go on OpenSeas and Harry Pack Art Collection is your main collection. I think everyone should check out. And then you're like super active on Twitter, and I recommend people check you out on there. And then your website, you had talked about maybe possibly working on it and adding some more stuff, which I'm glad to hear because your website presence, you're like a mystery man. You're like the NFT Banksy. I couldn't find anything about you on your website, so I was glad to kind of like meet the man behind the weird trippy art and all the weird emojis on your profile. So thank you for all of that, man. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance and to connect with a fellow artist, and I appreciate your generosity and your time and your willingness to kind of dive into a lot of topics that a lot of people would shy away from. So thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Thanks a lot for inviting me, man. And look forward to connecting and just coming along to the fish tank. Anybody who's in the space, just come and check out the NFT groups on Clubhouse and listen to all of the crazy stuff that's happening on there.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you asking me to come and talk to you. It's been really cool just meeting you.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to develop our friendship, and I look forward to seeing what you put out and seeing your information and the other artists you share on Twitter. So, brother. Thanks, man.
Sweet. Nice one.
All right, man.
Speak later.
Take care, brother.
Thanks, guys. We hope you loved that episode. If you did love it and could give us some love on iTunes, that would be amazing. You can leave a review and we will give you a shout out at some point on this podcast.
Also, if you guys can follow us on social media, we would love to hear from you. We are on pretty much every social media platform at Shifting Perceptions Podcast, which is the same as our website, shiftingperceptionspodcast.com. We look and reply to all comments, so please share with your friends, tag us. We appreciate all the love.
And don't forget that all of our guests also see all these comments, so I'm sure if you want to just have a space you can reach out, these are the places to do it.
Special thanks to John Harvey for creating and editing and producing our show's music, and thank you to Kevin Rigby for our photo of our podcast. Appreciate you guys all. Talk to you soon.